Hi, and welcome to Complete and Cast, the official podcast for Complete and Box video games. Today in episode 54, we're hitting the brakes on video games, right? And we're talking NFL football again, because that is why you come to this channel. And we have with us again, as we have for the last 3 years, this will be our third year. I looked it up. This is third straight year, where we're doing our 2019 NFL season preview with guest from Cat Scratch Reader SB Nation website, Brian Beversluis. I said it right. Sluice. Yeah, every time. I've known you for like 6-7 years, and I always do it wrong. But
it's okay. You don't have to say it often, so I get it.
Yeah, I mean, Brian is like easier. Brian B. I think that's we always do Brian B. But I try to do it incorrectly at least one time per year. So we're here talking not video games. So if you don't like NFL football, I mean, I don't know why you would have clicked on this anyway, considering it says not video game related. But, you know, we're going to talk NFL football because that is my secondary love. So let's just jump right into this. 2018 was a year in which they played another season.
They did. They did play another
2018,
season.
it ended in 2019. Mm-hmm. So let's start at the base right here, right? So they used a football in most games. Right? Yeah. They moved up and down the field. And in most games, except for the Super Bowl, points were scored.
Yes, correct.
It was a weird season.
I see more scoring when I take my friends out for drinks than I saw in that game.
That's a yikes from me. we'll get to that then. So it was a weird season. It started out, and we're just going to do a really quick recap of 2018 before we go into the offseason for 2019 and what we want to see for each of our teams and all that stuff. But I just want to recap 2018 real quick because I have fun with it. Yeah. Last year I didn't have fun. 2 years ago I had fun. There's a reason that I had fun recapping 2 years ago, but not last year. Do you know that the first year that we did this, February 2017, the Atlanta Falcons could not hold a 28-3 lead in a NFL football game?
That's a thing that happened?
You might want to recheck the tapes. Go watch episode 29 or 30 or whatever it was, and the score was, you won't believe this, 28 Falcons, 3 this team from the Northeast. And guess what? The team from the Northeast won it.
Wait, no way.
17 minutes.
The Falcons definitely won the Super Bowl.
No, 17 minutes left in the game. I swear to God, you gotta watch this game. It's crazy. It's like, if you type it into YouTube, I'm sure it'll come up.
There's no way this happened.
I'm telling you right now, and as an NFC South fan, I can't believe you haven't heard of this before. So, it's crazy. So, anyway, check it out. So, 2018, I told you I would get it in there somehow. I had to get it right away. 2018 was a weird year. It started out in the preseason where everyone was freaking out about the new contact rule. Yep. The new, I guess you would call it roughing the passer rule. And it was weird because now in the preseason you would understand that they would call it more often than not because they're going to essentially be telling the coaches, here's where we are, right? Here's where the line is. So we're going to call it more often than not and then kind of, back off in the regular season, right? But then you saw in the first couple weeks some really big calls on that. I specifically remember the Vikings Packers game. It was like week 2 or 3, and that game was literally decided because of a crazy roughing the passer against Clay Matthews. We all feel bad for him. He got like 3 of them in the biggest like situations, and you're like, I just feel. Do you remember that game?
I just remember. I don't remember the play itself, but I do remember Clay Matthews being like a big target of all these.
It was. Yeah, it was going because that game ended in a tie. The Vikings were down by 7. Kirk Cousins, as he has never been known to do before, threw an interception in a big.
Really?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
In a big $84 million guaranteed over 3 years. By the way, remember that?
Yeah,
I remember that. So he threw a pick, and Clay Matthews did just like a normal hit, nothing crazy, and he was called for roughing the passer. They tied the game, and it being the Vikings, they did not win it; they tied it.
Of course.
Yeah, but the weird thing was, after the first couple weeks, that went away. Like, you didn't see that happening too much more after weeks like 3 or 4. Like, it's like instantly they had like a conference call and they were like, no. But one thing we did see throughout the entire season was, and I'm not one to complain about this too much, how about that officiating? Can you think of any situations you had for your Panthers stuff or anything you saw throughout? I mean, it was just, it wasn't replacement level refs bad, right? Like, we're not going to go there, but like, there were so many times where you just, like, on a Monday, I wanted to talk to people about, like, football, and it was just about the refs.
Yeah, there were times where they weren't, like, it's so unbelievably inconsistent these days, because, like, there's pass interference on a play where the defensive back was trying to make a play on the ball. There's hit to the head of a defenseless receiver. In fact, Eric Reed was a target of a lot of really stupid penalties that there were some that were deserved, but there were a lot that weren't. And between, like, against the Eagles, he caught what would have been the game-sealing interception. They called it an incomplete pass. That was more of a catch than Jericho Cotchery's catch in that Super Bowl with the Panthers. And they still overturned it, despite... They called it an interception on the field, and they overturned it.
Wow. So...
yeah, which means that they saw evidence that it was an incomplete pass. Meanwhile, everybody at home was like, I'm pretty sure that's an interception. Like, so... yeah, it's so unbelievably up and down. There were times where, like, the officiating made sense. Like, there were those roughing the passer calls where you're like, I get it. Or, like, the pass interference plays where you're like, I get it. But there were so many where you're just like, come on, man.
I'm all for them making the game safer. So, like, these defense... I was just before you came watching... they're called hospital hits.
Yeah, I saw that too.
You saw that too, right? So, like, I'm watching the stuff from, like, the 90s or, like, even in the early 2000s. There was one on Deshaun Jackson.
Yeah.
And, like, 3 on Austin Collie. Like,
yeah,
right? And you see them and you're like, no. Like, if I could just press a button and get rid of those, it's like, I'm not... Big hits are fine, right?
Yeah.
Big hits are big hits. Great. Like, I want to see these guys, bruised up and all that stuff, but... defenseless players calling out that's fine, because you really don't want to see a player just, like, immobilized. Like, when they really get knocked out and their arms are, like, still up in the air and they're laying on the ground, like, that's terrifying.
Yeah.
Like, so the reason they're doing it makes sense, but like you said, the big thing is this inconsistency, and it's not even between the different ref crews. Sometimes it's, like, during the game, and you're just like, what's holding? Like, I get it. Holding happens on every single play. I get it, right? Like, it just is what it is. But it's like, what is holding? Like, you gotta give me... you see these coaches on the sideline just complaining, and you're like, you feel bad for them, because you're like, if you... like, Belichick would be like, if you tell me what holding is, and you stick to that, then we won't do it. Right. But then otherwise, it's like, I have no idea what you want. It's just like trying to talk to, like, a spouse or a girlfriend, and you're like... tell me your feelings, and they're just like, no, you gotta figure it out, and you're like,
it's not that simple. Tell me what you want.
No, and so it just kind of, like I said, the big thing was the inconsistency, and it just happened so many times. I mean, there was the Saints-Rams one in the NFC Championship game.
Oh, yeah.
And, like, honestly, I'm glad that the floodgates are opening a little bit for, like, reviewing stuff like that. It'd be interesting. I don't want them to do it for everything by any means. If you get, like... if you can use it as a challenge,
that would be the best case scenario.
That would be fine.
The ability to challenge that.
Absolutely. I mean, after watching some the Alliance of American Football games, it's terrible football, but it's got some good stuff going for it. In that there's, like, very few, like, breaks and delays, and it makes you look at the NFL and go, "Wow, there's a lot of breaks and delays." Like, there just are, and you want to try to limit that as much as possible. So you don't want to be like, oh, yep, I think that's DPI, just doing it over and over again. But I would be okay with that.
Yeah.
I mean, if a replay official can look at it and give it a judgment call, like, a couple times per game, and that's your challenge, like, that's great. The competition and rules committee is very, like, weird and old school sometimes.
Right.
Where you're like, please change this, and they're like, no. And then there's other stuff like the kickoff where we're like, well, we're going to keep changing the rules, so essentially the kickoff becomes so boring that in a couple years when we do away with it, you'll be like, oh, I don't miss those things at all.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's essentially what, like, the one I hate is the onside kick rule, how they changed it now, how you can't move beforehand. It's like, I'm sure there was an onside kick converted this year, although I don't know. There like, legitimately might not have been.
I think the chances right now are, like, less than 1% to convert an onside kick.
Yeah. So it's like, that takes a lot out. Like, the onside kick is a weird play. It just kind of is. But you gotta give the team, like, a chance to get the ball back, you know? And again, that's another part where the AAF, where you go for it on, like, 4th and 12 from your 30, where at least you have a chance. Like, that involves all skill. And unlike Belichick, I like special teams. So I like seeing, like, the weird onside kicks. There was one... the Colts had against the Texans years ago where I think it was McAfee, like, just dribbled it, like, maybe, 10, just literally dribbled it 10 yards straight down and then jumped on it. Like, no one was anywhere near him, kind of thing. And I love that stuff. That's the kind of stuff that keeps people on their toes. But, yeah, the officiating, bad.
Yeah.
I think we can say that. how did your Panthers do? How was your season? Did you have a good time at school this year?
No, I mean they started the season off 6-2. They knocked off the Cowboys. They knocked off the Ravens.
Eagles, right?
They knocked off the Eagles. They knocked off a bunch of playoff caliber teams, and they looked like a team that could be good. And then everything just fell apart. They hit their bye week, which usually coming off the bye week they would generally have they might lose off the bye week and then just go on a tear. No, the Pittsburgh Steelers beat the crap out of them.
Was that after the bye week?
Yeah, and then yeah, it was just bad. Well, Cam Newton's shoulder got all messed up. He wasn't able to throw in any real capacity past 10 yards, which is not how they schemed that. Eventually, defenses figured that out, so it wasn't as hard to play defense against Cam because he's either going to run the ball or check it down to somebody. Their defense wasn't all that great. It's not the kind of defense that you'd be used to with the Carolina Panthers. Their secondary, I think, is pretty good. But their front seven failed them this year, 100%. Especially at the end of the year. The beginning of the year, they
minus
were okay.
Kuechly. Kuechly was great still.
Kuechly was always Kuechly had a down year, and he was still graded as the best linebacker in the league by PFF.
I saw that he's top 10 or 15 overall.
Yeah, he's easily still a great player. The problem is that what happened was these offenses were scheming around him, getting hats on him and Thomas Davis, and the defensive line wasn't able to, give them space. So.
Would you say that Pittsburgh, it was a Thursday night game, that game was the turning point, or was it starting before that?
I don't know if it was you could say it was the turning point, but there were so many times they had the opportunity to win a game and turn it around between those. It wasn't like they got beat up as badly as they did against the Steelers. They had so many chances to win a game and turn it all around. They were always really close, and then they just didn't do it and just lasted for several weeks. They didn't win a game after the 6-2 record until the last week of the season.
And that was a game where the Saints didn't play
cared.
Anyone.
Yeah, the Panthers played their third string quarterback. It was bad.
Yeah, that Monday night game against the Saints, it was probably week 15. I texted you and I was like, "What is up with Cam?" Because he was just out there and all players play hurt. That's just a thing, right? But
right.
I was like, what is going? Is he done? The way he was playing, it was is his career over? He's 29 or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And it was just he couldn't throw at all, and I was like, what is he doing out here?
Yeah, allegedly he even told Ron Rivera he couldn't throw anymore.
I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I understand at the point if they would have won out, they had a slim chance of getting in the playoffs, but at that point, it's okay, you got into the playoffs, and now Cam can't throw. So what are you gonna win the Super Bowl? Who's the backup? Who was
Taylor
the backup?
Heineke?
Okay, are you gonna win the backup with Taylor Heineke?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, worst case scenario would be that. I think it was 2015 when the Panthers played the Cardinals in the Wild. The worst playoff game ever played, by the way. Worst. Who was it? Was
it was Ryan
Lindley, who is now a quarterbacks coach or something. He's a positional coach in the league now. And that just reminded you about that existed. That game existed, and I watched it. I think I was lucky enough to be working, so I didn't have to watch the whole thing. I just had it on in the background.
Even as a Panthers fan, at that time, I was just you know what, whatever. If they win, great. That was my mentality on it because they shouldn't have even been in the playoffs, and that was the
7-9 year, right?
Yep, that was 7-8-1.
Okay.
7-8-1.
Woo!
That was the reason they made the playoffs. Was that tie?
The tie.
Thank you, Andy Dalton.
He's the only one who ties anymore. I mean, that's
So yeah, that was by far a terrible playoff game. That's probably what Carolina would have done if they made it to the playoffs because their offense is so predicated on Cam Newton. There's no way they would have made it work with Taylor Heineke. No way.
Panthers 2018 team MVP. I think I know who you're gonna say. Maybe not, because I thought it would be a slam dunk CMC, Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, Christian McCaffrey, definitely. 100%.
Was it his rookie year or his second year?
Second year.
Okay.
Yeah, he even when Cam couldn't throw or he was playing with Taylor Heineke or their backup Kyle Allen to Taylor Heineke, he still made plays like crazy.
I mean, McCaffrey specifically won the league that we're in. He specifically won it for Will, the guy who won it. Will had him, and all of a sudden McCaffrey every week was scoring 3 touchdowns, and it was GG. And yep, nope, it's over.
He was catching 5 to 7, maybe 10
my
passes.
gosh.
And with the PPR and scoring.
Oh yeah,
he was
I
great.
mean, he is if he doesn't go top 6 next year, like someone's sleeping. You know.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I would in PPR, I would legitimately consider taking him number 1. Like if I had the number 1 pick and I knew I wasn't picking again until 20 or whatever, I would legitimately consider picking him number 1 because of the PPR, because of all the receptions. I mean,
it's between him and Alvin Kamara.
Did he have the most receptions on the team?
Oh yeah, I believe
like
so.
By far. Okay, and
because the next closest would have maybe been DJ Moore.
And he plays what percent of snaps? Like 90, 95?
He plays more snaps than literally any player, not non-quarterback or offensive line.
He just doesn't come off the field. Yeah, that's, I mean, like, legitimately number 1 pick you would like, especially now that Le'Veon is like, you have no idea what's going on there, and all the other guys like Zeke or whatever are more of like just like your power backs. Like, again, you take him number 1. So yeah, CMC
100% MVP.
Yep, yep. Just going over Pats real quick. They had a pretty down year. They won 11-5. I guess that's about it. Oh wait, they won the Super Bowl. Yay! Yeah. Let me talk about that real quick then. It wasn't the best game.
It was not. Definitely.
No one will tell you. Now, when people say it was the worst Super Bowl ever, y'all are plebs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because like the Broncos Seahawks one was like, it was funny. Don't get me wrong. It was funny to see some team get BTFO, but like that game was over by like the second quarter. Like it was done, right?
Yeah,
this one at least was not over until honestly it wasn't even over until Gostkowski kicked that second field goal with 2 minutes left.
Yeah.
If he would have missed that, and he was all shaky all night or whatever. So like that's I can't possibly say that it was even like the worst of the last 10 years.
The problem is the last 2 years that fans have been treated to the 28-3 game, which is always going to be entertaining.
Yep.
And the Eagles-Pats Super Bowl which was a great game.
I told you last year that was like one of my, I don't want to say favorite because of the result, but I think that was an unbelievable game.
Yeah, that was.
I thought it was fantastic.
You couldn't have written a better script for a Super Bowl.
It was great. Last play, Gronk in the end zone, and you knew if he caught that, they would somehow get the 2 point, just all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I think people, like you said, are a little lucky nowadays.
Yeah.
Because like if you go to the 80s and like the 90s, like Super Bowls were always bad.
Yeah.
Like 49ers, right? Their Super Bowl, quote unquote, was the NFC Championship game against the Cowboys. Why? Because they would go to the Super Bowl and beat the Chargers 48-3, right? Whatever. Right. So like you can say one of the worst in the last like 15 years, and I'd say okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
But like if you say worst ever, I'd be like the John Gruden one where Rich Gannon was picked off 5 times. That was you'd watch that right now over the okay, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a very interesting year for the Pats, and honestly, out of all the ones, I feel like this one was the most like almost, I don't want to say exhilarating, but like felt the best because like this was not their best team by any means. They were 11-5. Everyone all year counted them out, but that's a common thing now. Like until Brady retires, like they could win the next 2 Super Bowls, and unless they start out like 8-0, like Max Kellerman and all those people are going to come out and be like, the cliff, he's in the cliff, kind of thing. Yeah. Throws a pick on his first play, and they lose, to the Chiefs week 1 or whatever, and that's not the schedule, but whoever they play week 1, and it's the cliff, and it was so great to see it. They it wasn't their. Every NFL team, honestly, is so different year to year, and sometimes it's like half season to half season different, like your Panthers,
Right.
And that team on the second half of the year for the 2018 Pats was like so ground and pounded out. I loved it. It was like watching like early 2000s. Like they just would come out in the I form, and every stat would say, yeah, they're going to run this with Sony, and yeah, they ran it with Sony. I thought it was like in a way like. I don't know if I want to, say it's the brilliance of Belichick or if it's just the fact that that's what they have, so he was using it. But now in the NFL,
I would think actually the second part was exactly what happened. To be honest,
I honestly I feel that I feel like that's the way. I love to give Belichick credit when I can, but it's like nowadays the base defense in the NFL is.
The 4-3 nickel.
A nickel. It's the nickel,
right?
Sorry,
I was like, wait a minute. Yeah, no.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So it's nickel. Nickel is the base. Like nickels run more than anything else, and nickel is an extra cornerback instead of a linebacker, right? So what do the Pats do? They come out with a freaking 270-pound fullback and just says, "Okay, stop us with your nickel cornerback," right?
Yep.
And it was very interesting because the Chargers in their wildcard game against the Ravens did that really crazy 8 defensive back thing.
Oh, that was
brilliant. Great, right?
Brilliant,
That was fantastic. And that, like, Lamar was just like, what? It's like going against a running team and then being like, corners! And you're like, okay. But, as long as you're not pushed around, it makes a lot of sense. But then the next week they come out against the Pats, and they're like still running like 6 or 7 DBs, and like Belichick's over on the sideline like, are they serious?
Yeah.
Because like okay, it's like James Devlin plays 40-50% of snaps, and it's like okay, like a slot cornerback is going to be like 200, 210, 220 pounds, right?
Their slot corner is Jason Verrett too. He's small.
Okay, so he's less than like a fullback.
Yeah.
So it was just really interesting. Like, I don't think it was Belichick, like, in his master lair, but he was like, you know what? We have a good blocking fullback. We have a good blocking goal line, so let's just run the ball. And that was fun.
Yeah.
That was a good time. Like I said, the Super Bowl wasn't anything crazy. The final drive was vintage Brady. I loved it. The touchdown drive. It was the second to final drive. I don't know if you viewed anything on it after the game, but they came out in a heavy set with a fullback and a running back, and they spread it out wide, and they ran the same gosh dang play 3 times in a row because it worked. It was just kind of like a hitch high-low kind of thing, and they ran the same play 3 times in a row with a fullback on the sideline, kind of just like, you have to have someone on the fullback. Right. You can't just be like, don't guard him or else he'll get 7-8 yards, whatever. Right. And that is, out of the entire game, what ended up working. So that just shows you how weird NFL is. Like, they're like spreading it out the whole time, trying to get away from Aaron Donald and whatever, and then they're like, you know what, let's just take James White and put him out wide. Okay, whatever.
Yep.
So, yeah, it was a very interesting season. A lot of highs and lows. I would not have bet on the Pats, early on to win it. But week by week, the only one that I was very worried about was the AFC Championship game, which brings me to my very last thing of the 2018 recap, which is, what was your favorite game of the year? To me, there's 3 that are above and beyond all of them, but I'm going to be biased in my choices.
Well, I personally loved the Chargers-Ravens game because that was just an absolute...
just a slaughter for 3.5
Well, it wasn't
quarters.
even just that. It was a clinic on how you play defense in this passing league now. And you got to see Lamar. You got to finally see the Ravens say, you know what, Lamar, go throw that ball because what we're doing is not working. Like, the Chargers came out there with the absolute best game plan possible against Lamar Jackson. They're like, you're not going to run with him. We're going to crowd the box. It's just not going to work. You're going to have to make him throw. And then when he started throwing it, he did well. And you're sitting there as a Ravens fan being like, why didn't they do this earlier?
Right.
But it showcased Derwin James' talent. It showcased Lamar Jackson as, the potentially good quarterback in the future. It showcased the fact that Phillip Rivers is still a good quarterback. I really liked how they used Melvin Gordon throughout the year, so that was really cool. I really enjoyed that. Another one of my favorite games was, honestly, the Bears-Eagles game.
That was a great game.
That was a really good game. And
yep. Up and down the whole way. The doink at the end.
The Bears fans will hate Cody Parkey for that, but that dude was money throughout the entire game. He kicked, 4 field goals before that?
Yeah, and that's the thing. People only remember the last one. I say this all the time. Super Bowl 38 against the Panthers, Vinatieri missed 2 easy field goals.
Yeah.
And people only remember the last one, which was also not very long. It was like low 40s yards. But then it's, Vinatieri won it for you, Brady. And it's like, he missed like a 38-yard field goal, and like missed it. He had the other one blocked because of like nonsense or whatever. But it's like, people only remember the last one. He could have, they scored 1 touchdown, right? And the rest were field goals.
Yeah.
And all they remember is that one. And that's just how it is in the NFL.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's just how it is. Scott Norwood, for all we know, for the Bills in 1990 could have been a pretty decent kicker, but like, ask anyone. You know what I mean? And Bill Buckner had almost a Hall of Fame career. He had like 2,600 hits.
Yep.
No one knows, kind of. It just is what it is. He had like a long career, and like if he would have had 300 more hits, he would have been a shoo-in for the Hall of Fame. But yeah, that was a fantastic game. I'm going to go with, I think these 3 will be what most people would say. Chiefs, Pats both times. I thought especially the AFC Championship game was just so good. And I love how mad Chiefs fans and everyone else was about the coin flip in overtime. Do I think that I want the rule changed? Of course I do. Like, I think it's stupid. Like, even though the Pats won a Super Bowl and an AFC Championship game by Matthew Slater calling heads. And it landing heads. I think that they should get another go at it? Yes. But you know what? Another thing you could do is you could stop them from going 75 yards. I'm just saying. Yeah. Like, you could do that. So, now, if I see it get changed, will I be happy? Of course I will. And, of course, the last one, this one is very obvious. This was the one game this year that transcended normal NFL fandom, where I saw a lot of people who I never see talking about football talking about it, which was Monday Night Football, Chiefs, Rams.
Oh my God.
That was a game that I saw people who I'm like, you like football? Like, commenting on like Facebook, and I'm like, wow. And that was just a crazy game. It had everything. It had like, at the same time, amazing offense and amazing defense.
Yeah, there were like
3 or 4 like defensive touchdowns.
Yep.
So like I love games where they're like, one play it's like our offense is clicking, the other's like, oh, fumble 6.
Yeah. And people will look at the scoreboard and be like, oh, the defenses suck. This is a passing league. Nope. It's just that there was 2 high-powered offenses and 2 pretty good defenses, and they all made plays.
And it goes to show you at the end of the year, when we look at most of the playoff games, it's cold. Defense generally wins.
Yep,
you know,
it does.
Every year, there's a game that's 50-45, and they go, you know, and then you see, you know, most Super Bowls aren't 45-37. No. We were lucky with the Eagles-Pats one. Most of them aren't that. So that was 2018. We're gonna head over to 2019 at this point then, and you know what? Let's start with the most important part of team building, which is something you brought up to me that you wanted to talk about, and that is the salary cap. The salary cap has gone up this year. It's gone up like every year.
Yeah.
I think it's like $188 million, if I remember something like that,
correct,
right?
Yeah.
So that's $188 million to eventually get 50 to give to 53 people. And you had some thoughts on the salary cap.
Well, my issue. So this happens every year, and this is a little inside bit about being a writer for the sports side, but fans get real mad about salary cap. Let me tell you, like,
now mad. Go a little further into that.
So here's the deal, and I'll break this down. Like, I don't know. I don't remember if Torrey Smith had been traded for last year when we were talking at that time. I don't think so.
I don't think so. I feel like that was later.
Yeah, but Torrey Smith was on the books for $5 million with no dead cap, which means that if they cut him, there would be if there was dead cap, that would be what they'd still pay him to not be on the roster. So he had a $5 million contract. They traded Darryl Worley, he looked decent in his rookie year, and then just kind of didn't show enough to really warrant being on a roster. So instead of letting Torrey Smith hit free agency and trying to sign him, they just traded Darryl Worley to the Eagles and got Torrey Smith on a $5 million per year deal. And let me tell you, Panthers fans hated how much money he was making. Like, they were all like, the entire year they were like, cut this guy, we deserve this $5 million.
Did he finish the team with? He finished the year with the team. I honestly don't remember a single thing
he didn't play
did.
much after.
Oh, okay.
He played in the beginning. He played in the first half of the year. He ended up with like less than 200 yards receiving.
Okay, because I can't think of like anything he did.
When you look at it before the season started and before the draft, the Panthers had DJ. They didn't have DJ Moore. Excuse me. They had Devin Funchess on a career year or a contract year. They had Curtis Samuel, who didn't play damn at all in his rookie year. And that was really it, aside from like career backups. They ended up signing Jarius Wright, who hadn't been relevant since like 2014 or something like that with the Vikings.
So you're saying they were devoid of wide receivers.
They didn't have wide receiver talent.
Right.
And like the problem is that NFL fans treat salary cap like it's their own money. And that's what drives me nuts, is like, who cares what he's making? Like, there are times where I understand, like when Matt Khalil signed a huge contract for an offensive tackle despite having no proven real work aside from his rookie year. That I understood, but like Torrey Smith being on a $5 million deal when you had nothing before draft signing him or trading for him aside from Devin Funchess, that made sense. And like, if they let him hit free agency, he probably would have been more expensive, because what people don't understand is that with rising salary cap comes rising salaries. Like,
I mean, you do know, speaking of salaries and being crazy for wide receivers, you do know how the highest paid wide receiver was in 2018, right?
Odell Beckham?
It was Sammy Watkins.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So like, he made like $16 million.
Yeah, and like
that's, by the way, folks, Sammy Watkins.
Sammy Watkins. Sammy freaking Watkins.
Are you a huge NFL fan? No? Do you know who Sammy Watkins is? Well, he's not the best wide receiver.
No.
He's not the 30th best wide receiver. Yeah. And yet he was the best paid, because that's just how free agency, since we're going to talk about this, I'm going to let you finish on salary cap. Free agency is so different every year. Kirk Cousins is currently I believe the highest paid year per year.
And it's like a fully guaranteed.
And it's a fully guaranteed, right? Is Kirk Cousins the best quarterback? Of course not. But was he the best available last year? Yeah, actually, he was.
And that's the thing about free agency, is that you're going out there for players where now they're on the open market, so you're subject to the eBay of NFL, essentially. Like, you're out trying to outbid other teams, and that's why people see these contracts going out, and they're like, there's no way that guy deserved that, but teams are willing to pay a little extra to get that player. That's why guys like, what's his face? Albert
Hainsworth?
No, not Albert Hainsworth.
Okay.
He was with the Chiefs last year, or the year before, and he signed with the Dolphins this year. It was Albert Wilson. He signed
the wide receiver?
Yeah, he signed like an $8 million per year deal. Albert freaking Wilson.
Yeah, for the dude, like all his whole thing, he's like Kenny Stills. He's just fast.
That's
like,
the problem, is that when they hit free agency, anybody with a modicum of talent that's like above average is going to get paid as if they're high end talent.
And
that's how it works.
The other very interesting thing about salary cap is when you look at the whole 32 teams and you look at the cap space available, there are probably, I'd say, 10 teams where you look at them and the wiggle room is less than, that's 188 million. I'd say less than 10-15% of their overall salary is open, right? Yeah. But you look at the top 10 and they have like I think it's the Colts have the most this year.
100 million.
The Colts have 100 million. Like, the Colts, I can't, like, this blows my mind. The Colts have Andrew Luck on a very expensive quarterback contract, right? It's like,
it's actually pretty good.
I guess comparatively, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, I don't know, 18-20 million, right? Whatever. So, like, you have that percentage of the 188 gone already, and they still have 100 million. And correct me if I'm wrong, the NFL has a minimum you have to put in, right? There's
essentially, yeah. I mean, like, it's hard not to hit the minimum.
Yeah,
because you have to field a roster,
right? Yes. But, like, you know, you're Le'Veon Bell.
That's why Cleveland, for example, the 1 year traded for Brock Osweiler. It was to literally just take some cap off their books.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Or else they would be fined whatever.
Yeah.
You know, that would be. So you have these top 10 teams in terms of having salary cap. It's bizarre when you look at it in like almost like a bar graph. You're like, the outliers at the top are so crazy, and these are the outliers that are like, oh, like, I love me some Danny Amendola. He's, like, one of my favorite players of all time. But, like, he signed, like, a $5 million per year contract with the Dolphins,
Which
right?
is funny, because I actually think that's fair based on the way the market goes with free
Right.
agency.
Yeah. But you would never think of it because, like, if you look, he's like, I forget the guy's name. He's like the dude who won, World Series MVP with the David Freese with the Cardinals, like some dude you never heard about, but then all of a sudden he's clutch at the end. If you look at Danny Amendola's like even career stats or year by year, you'd be like, seriously? Because like he might end the year with like 500 yards, right?
Right.
But like every single, as a Pats fan who watches every game, every single yard is like so key and so clutch. That's why stats are sometimes misleading. But you look at it and you're like, wow, Danny Amendola made like 5-6 million, you know, whatever, and it's like, yeah, that's how a free agency is. Like, you better get the dude you want and pony up, because then the Colts, the Jets, the Browns all have 80 million that they're like trying to use, and they'll find a Sammy Watkins to throw a bunch into it.
Exactly.
So yeah, the salary cap is just, it's so bizarre.
Yeah, well, part of it is that there are teams out there like the Colts who haven't really retained a lot of high-end talent that they've drafted. A lot of times they just continue to build through the draft, and that's why they have all this space. We're like, I read a comment earlier today that actually made me laugh out loud, because the Panthers have around 17 million, and that's after signing Eric Reed to a 3-year, $7 million.
That's about where a lot of teams are. Pats are around there as well.
And the guy's way of solving the problem was, well, Cam Newton should be like Tom Brady and take a pay cut for his team because he's so selfish and blah, blah, blah. And then I actually looked up their contracts. Cam Newton is the 15th highest paid quarterback in the league, and he's a former NFL MVP. There aren't many quarterbacks who can say that.
Right.
And right below him was Tom Brady at 16. You want to know what the difference in their yearly salary was? $260,000.
Negligible in terms of the salary cap.
The real reason why the Panthers don't have that kind of cap is because they also have Luke Kuechly, who is definitely the best linebacker in the league. Changed my mind, and
I still want him.
Yeah, and
you can still give him to us right now.
K'Wan Short is one of the best defensive tackles in the league. If he hit free agency, he would have gotten paid a fat contract. The Panthers decided to keep him. They decided to pay for Greg Olsen to keep his services. He's the only tight end in NFL history with 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons. It is expensive to retain good players. That's just how it works. Like, every team would like to build these kinds of like Super Bowl winning teams in the draft. I mean, for example, what's his face? Flowers.
Trey Flowers.
Trey Flowers
is a gone man.
He's a gone man now, but they capitalized on the fact that they had him on a rookie deal. They got lucky with that.
Well, there's also it's so let me just say it's also complicated.
Yeah,
I am fully convinced because the team that had the least salary cap space of all 32 was the Eagles. They had negligible. It was like 6-7 million, right? And then they signed Brandon Graham to an extension of like 10-12 a year. So my math indicates that they are currently negative, which obviously can change, and you have time to do that and whatever. I don't think you get hit like until like maybe the year starts or whatever.
It's March 15th is when you have to be below the salary cap.
But to my math, they are negative. But like everyone's telling me they're not, and I'm like, had 6 million, signed a guy to 12 million.
Well, part of it is that. Part of it may have had to do with Nick Foles, number one. I haven't looked at their salary
cap.
That
could be it.
But because technically speaking, until he opted out of his contract, they owed him $21 million this year.
You know, that might honestly be the case, because I checked that before that happened. But
so that could have been it. Number two, the thing that people don't always understand is that extensions actually do tend to free up salary cap. A good example right here, the Panthers are paying Shaq Thompson, linebacker they drafted back after the 2014 season, he's pretty good. They're paying him $9 million this year, and it's all unguaranteed aside from injury. So what they could do is sign him to an extension and give him like a big signing bonus. The way the signing bonus works is you pay them that up front, but it's spread out cap-wise over the entirety of their contract. That frees up salary cap.
Right.
So I saw the Eagles extended one of their guards. I don't know what his contract looked like before they did that, but that may have freed up space as well. So that's how NFL teams get around that. Is that they typically if you see a guy sign a 1-2 year deal, most likely they're going to be hitting your cap hard that year. You see a guy sign a 3, 4, 5 year deal, their cap hit might not be a whole lot. Like a good example right now is Eric Reed, who Panthers fans fucking hated. I'm sorry for cursing. Hated the fact that they signed him to a 3-year, quote unquote, $7 million per year deal. What actually happened was they signed him to a deal where this year he counts $4 million against the cap. Next year it goes up. The following year it goes up.
It's pretty high the last year.
They owe him less money guaranteed over time. So if he's not playing up to snuff, they cut him. They're good. So that's kind of why salary cap is so complicated, and fans don't really understand it. But when people get mad about players making a certain amount of money because they hit the open market, I'm like, it's not your money. Like, this isn't coming out of your pocket.
Yeah.
So,
and, another thing that makes it even more complicated is compensatory picks. For any who aren't too familiar with this, I guess only the biggest gearheads would be.
I am very familiar.
When you let a big name free agent go, if they make a certain amount of money on the open market, you get a pick back for them.
However, that can be nullified by signing another free agent.
Exactly. So essentially, if you lose 3 big name guys and you sign, say, 2, you might get a compensatory pick back. It's usually between the 3rd and 5th round.
And it's weird too, because it depends on. It's weird because it doesn't have to be the same contract. Like, it can be small. Like the Panthers signed I think it was Denoris Searcy last year or something like that. Very small amount of money. But he ended up nullifying out the pick that they would have gotten from Ed Dixon signing a pretty big contract with the Seahawks. Like it's weird to play with, and but NFL fans are so big on these compensatory selections, even though at best you're getting a 4th round pick.
No,
basically.
third.
But it's basically
it's at the end of the 3rd.
Pick.
Right. So here's the interesting thing about it. When people do their draft stuff, which we're about to get into the draft stuff, they have certain formulas to decide what each pick is worth. So letting a player like Trey Flowers was drafted late in the 4th round, and if they let him walk, they got 4 awesome years of service out of him, and then they get a pick even earlier than him,
Yep.
right? So it's essentially, if you look at it, not counting whatever rookie stuff he got, they moved up in the draft to have Trey Flowers for 4 years. Now, do I want him to stay? Of course. But do I understand also that the salary cap is a thing, and he is the best DN that's going to be out in the market. Someone is going to give him so stinking much money, it's going to be ridiculous. But Mike Florio from Pro Football Talk made a good point a couple weeks ago when he was like, do you know what 2 teams have the most compensatory picks this year? Patriots and Rams. And it's these compensatory picks, if you look at it throughout the years, is like a rich get richer kind of thing. And like, it's complicated. I won't pretend to understand exactly how it works, but at the end of the day, the teams that have the most are the teams that generally do the best. It's not like, oh, Browns have a ton of compensatory picks. Somehow, however the math works at the end of the day, the teams like the Pats and the Rams and the Chiefs and whatever end up with the most compensatory picks. Because in essence, they can be like, well, we can afford to let Trent Brown walk. Whatever, we'll find someone kind of thing.
Well, the thing about that is good drafting. That's the thing. Like,
yes.
If you draft, like, it's hard to be a good drafting team because the draft is basically a crapshoot. One team that's been very big on getting compensatory draft picks for a long time has been the Ravens, oddly enough.
And they've been good for years, obviously. They had like a couple down years, but overall they've been a top 5 team of the last 10 years.
The biggest thing is when you find players where you can't afford to keep them, but you draft well enough where you replace them that way, that's when you get compensatory draft picks. And the Patriots are a team where they understand how to find players who aren't worth a whole lot to certain teams and make them excel. Teams like the Rams, because here's the other thing. Trading does not impact compensatory draft picks.
Yeah.
Players who are cut do not impact that as well. It's only players who you let go in free agency who walk once they're done with their contracts. And that's why teams like the Ravens, Patriots, Rams tend to gather these picks. But one thing that I actually researched recently was somebody said, well, the Patriots are obviously a good team because they get a lot of compensatory draft picks. And my first argument was, number 1, they have Tom Brady. Number 2, they have Belichick. But number 3, I looked, they actually use those to move around in the draft more so than anything.
Yes.
And that's where you can really capitalize on those, because the one year the Panthers had 2 third-round picks. One was a high one was a low one from a compensatory selection they got for Julius Peppers. And what did they do? They drafted 2 defensive tackles because that was their biggest need in the 3rd round. Neither one of them worked out. So that's where the value lies in compensatory draft picks, in my opinion, is using them to move up and down the draft. Because it's tough to find guys who are going to be long-term contributors.
Every draft
there.
is different, too.
It is.
Every draft
100%.
is different. Sometimes you look at it like the Pats have... don't quote me on the exact number. It's something like not 9 picks in this draft, 10 picks. It's a lot of picks, maybe 11. Like, it's something like that. And they have like a absurdly high amount of the top 100. Like, you would expect by nature for them to have 3. They have like 5 or 6, right?
Right.
So like, if Belichick takes all those picks, I will be so surprised. Like, I don't see them picking round 1, pick 32. Something's happening where they're moving around somewhere.
The one trade that I really liked the one year was they doled out one of their compensatory selections along with guy they traded to the Browns.
Jamie Collins.
Jamie Collins. They did that to get rid of Jamie Collins, but they also moved up to a 2nd-round pick with it. Yeah. That was a very good trade, and that's another way to do it. So that is something that I really like about the compensatory selections. But the fans what bothers me is when I deal with people who are like, well, I hope Darrell Williams and Devin Funchess both sign huge contracts so the Panthers can end up with great compensatory selections. I'm like, but the Panthers need defensive linemen. They need defensive backs. They need offensive linemen. They might need a backup quarterback. They could still use another wide receiver. Like, I want to see them replace those rather than take those chances on a draft the next year. So it's a big game to play, and that's why it's hard to bank on those. A team like the Patriots can absolutely do it, and good for them that they can capitalize on the system, but some teams can't afford to.
You know, 2 things real quick to end this. It hasn't been till recently that you could trade compensatory picks.
No, it was the 2015 draft, I think it was.
And that makes it so much more complicated, fun. It's neat that you can do that. And just to finish off salary cap stuff real quick before we head into pure free agency and draft, just a couple small questions there. Clearly, the way that you are, unless you have Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, which is kind of, unfair, in certain ways. The way to have a championship team is to build. It's the 2013 Seahawks. It's build a good team around a good quarterback on a rookie deal.
Yep.
Because once
100%.
that quarterback gets paid, like once Jared Goff gets paid next year, like
that
forget
team's
about
gonna blow
it,
up.
right?
Yep.
Because like they have a lot of guys, Aaron Donald, Brandon Cooks, a lot of their linebackers on pretty decently long, whatever deals, and Jared Goff is there paying for rookie,
Yep.
wage scale, whatever it is. Once he gets paid, it's like forget it. Like I saw that happen to the every team. I mean
the Ravens.
Every team, like once they like really have to pay their like the Seahawks right now. Wilson is fantastic,
yes.
but now that he's taken a higher percentage, and they're like, oh, we can't have the entire Legion of Boom, like that. That's the stuff that can only happen if A, you are the most fantastic drafter of all time, or B, you have a good quarterback on a rookie deal, and you can be like, let's build an amazing defense here, folks.
There are times, though, where you can get ahead of it. Like, the Falcons and the Panthers both did this, where they signed Ryan and Newton before the last year of their deal. And Cam Newton has been probably the best bargain quarterback since then, because that was the year before he became an NFL MVP. So there is value in signing them ahead of time, but yeah, I agree. When they're that cheap, you can build around them. So
yeah, and it's not saying that teams don't win with highly paid quarterbacks, but like
it's hard.
It's
really hard.
You know, that's why the Colts going into this offseason is so interesting, because you got your highly paid quarterback who's pretty good, and then you have all this extra money. That does not happen too often.
Because they've drafted really good players for their defense and their offense. They've done an excellent job with it.
So you mentioned mostly what you want to see your team do in both free agency and the draft for the Panthers. Is there a particular player or two that you're interested in, whether it be free agency or the draft? We'll just, since we're going on in time, we'll just put them both together there.
So for me, the Panthers have a lot of needs now, because Julius Peppers retired. They had a defensive end who was basically a starter walking free agency. Mike Adams was like 45 years old at safety. You might remember him. He picked off Tom Brady twice in the same game when he played with the Colts.
What when we're talking early 2010s kind of thing?
No, it was 2016, 15.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
I think it was 15.
Yeah, he was 33 when he did that,
wow.
And he was 35 for the Panthers last year. It was like, so they let him go. They are going to let Devin Funchess walk. They're going to let Darrell Williams walk. Offensive tackle, probably getting highly paid despite coming off major knee surgery. So they have a lot of needs. For me, the way that I've always wanted to see it is that you build up free agency in a way where you can approach the draft where you don't have to take a certain position. However, for the Panthers, it's almost like they're going to have to, because they can go out there and sign a free agent defensive end. That might be the entirety of what they do, aside from like the mid-level guys to like get depth. I think what they're going to end up doing is signing another safety, who I think it's going to be Eric Weddle.
Yeah, he just got released.
He's number one, not going to count against those precious compensatory draft selections. Number two, has a history with Ron Rivera, and he can play free safety. So you put him with Eric Reed. Your safety's position is taken care of.
I still think he's good.
Oh yeah, he was absolutely fine with the Ravens last year.
And did you see who the Ravens spent the money on that they saved from him? They signed their backup blocking tight end to like,
I did see that,
$7 million a year or something like that. So they're like, my one friend shared to me, and he was like, Weddle died for this, and I'm like, rip.
Come to Carolina, baby. That's my like realistic pick. I'd like to see them go at. I'd like to see them if we were sitting here and I wasn't being realistic about the cap. I'd like to see them go after a defensive end.
So
maybe Trey Flowers.
Yeah.
But I don't know how creative Ron Rivera can be with him, because he's not exactly the type of player where you can just put him on the blind side and expect him to get 10 sacks every year. You need to be creative with a player like him. I also like Jamie Collins. I think he'll fit into what Carolina wants to do for this whole
his main problem is he's a freelancer. That's the main reason the Pats got rid of him, because they're like, no, everyone do your dang job, and he's very athletic, but he was also like, I'll just do my thing, and it's like, no.
Yeah, the Panthers plan to have a defense this year where they play 3-4 and 4-3 a lot. It's going to be a lot like what Bill Belichick does allegedly. So I want to see a versatile piece like him be added, because then you don't know what the hell he's doing every play. So that's my dream for free agency. Do you want me to talk about the draft too while I'm at it?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Panthers fans are really clamoring for an offensive tackle. However, they have a lot of money tied up in Matt Khalil right now at left tackle. And Taylor Moton ended up being a really good pick a few years ago as a right tackle. He actually graded better than Darrell Williams, who's going into free agency right now. For me, I really want to see a defensive end. And I had that guy pegged as Montez Sweat until he ran the same 40-yard dash as Julio freaking Jones in the combine. 4.47. What the hell?
And what position does he play?
Defensive end.
Oh my God, forget it.
So this is a draft that's very deep with defensive line talent, and
I've heard that. Yeah,
this is the time where I think that if they can solidify the secondary and say we're going to go into the draft and just go after defensive line talent and go for maybe some mid-round wide receivers, maybe a mid-round like running back or something like that, I think they could potentially set them up to be competitors again. But I think pick number 1 and 2 need to be defense.
Is that been a problem position for them down the years, D end and D tackle? You mentioned it a lot, how they would just pick D ends and D tackles and they wouldn't work out.
D tackle was a really good draft in 2013 because they signed Star Lotulelei, or they drafted Star Lotulelei and K'Wan Short. K'Wan Short ended up being a Pro Bowl many times defensive tackle. Star Lotulelei was basically like your eat up the middle type player, where like defenses had to scheme around the fact that he was just there.
Yeah,
They have
Vince Wilfork guy.
They signed Dontari Poe. He didn't work out so well, but at the same time, I think he's more fit for being a 3-4 defensive tackle, and I think that's why they're going to try to adjust around that. Defensive end has been an issue because they haven't been able to draft a good one in a long time. The last one they drafted who was good was Charles Johnson. They found Mario Addison, who had bounced from 4 different teams as an undrafted free agent, got him to Carolina, used him as a situational pass rusher. He bulked up a little bit. Now he's usually good for around 10 sacks a season. But he's 31. They need to build up for the future for that, especially based on their mentality. So I could see them going after a hybrid type guy, like maybe a 3-4 outside linebacker that they line up and put him in his hand in the dirt and have him stand up and rush. But yeah, that's a big need, especially with how Carolina attacks.
By the way, that's literally Trey Flowers. Like the player you just mentioned.
Shut up!
Is literally
I know it's Spencer. I know we're not going to get him.
You know the problem, the thing that because I like Trey Flowers like as a player and like personally, like just going through his Twitter, I was like, most of the times you go through an NFL player's Twitter and you're like, why did I do that, right? Like his is like so like just wonderful and nice, and he's always doing these nice things, and like I just worry like. He's going to get paid, and he's going to be set for life. But I also worry that he's going to go to a team that's just like, just rush. Just be on one side. Just be the left D end and just rush. And it's just like, no, it's like Jamie Collins, like, you use him everywhere kind of thing. And I just worry, like, the Dolphins will be like, LDE. Just rush the passer, and it's like, but that's
not what he's good at.
The whole reason he's so good is all of a sudden you come out of the huddle and you're like, oh, he's a D tackle. You know what I mean? Or you're like, oh, he's a linebacker now. And that's my worry, that some team, and it's going to be like, oh, he only got like 4 sacks this year, and it's like, yeah, because
you line him up against the team's best pass protector every snap.
Yeah. And that's, you need to and not saying he can't do that sometimes. So yeah, my Pats one real quick is very simple. I actually, considering their salary cap, I don't expect too much. My boy's coming back home. I keep hearing it over and over again. Amendola is going to get cut.
Nice.
And he's coming back home, baby. Dude, the funniest tweet I ever read was, and like everyone feels the same way because we just like, we build shrines to him. Like literally, I know Edelman is so much better, but like Amendola is my boy, right? So on Twitter one day, he was like, he made some comment about how blue Jolly Ranchers are like his favorite ones. And every comment, there's like thousands of comments are, do you know what place has the best blue Jolly Ranchers? Foxborough, Massachusetts. And literally just everyone's just like, come, like, there's like gifs of people just being like, come home.
Yeah.
Come home. And it's just like, he has to see at least a little. And granted, of course, he's not cut yet. But just like every single person's like, that's really good. That's really good. Anyway, you should come play for the Pats. So I kept talking about Jolly Ranchers. And everyone's like, yeah, that's nice.
That's nice. So come back and don a blue jersey now. Let's do it.
It's like, you got paid, son. You're good. Come back. We're good. So I'd like to see that. Cordarrelle Patterson is a free agent. I have a feeling he's not going to be like highly sought after because he's a gadget kind of guy, but he's worked so well with the Pats. He's one of my favorite new players on the Pats because that dude is never, ever, ever going to give a defensive player an easy down. have you seen him at any point just hit someone and you're just like, oh man, like just his speed and his I never realized he was as big as he is until I saw him like, you know, in more games.
There's a reason he's a first round pick.
He is
not just because of how fast he
right
is.
He is so big, and like you could just see that every time like he was gonna like wham up on someone, like just even in their back of their mind they're like, oh, you know,
this sucks.
You know, it's like you know, like when he played running back for those couple of weeks, just every time he hit a linebacker I was like, oh my god, this is so good. So I hope they get him back. Just he's so valuable for them. And honestly, like, Chris Hogan's gone, that's fine, I love him, but like I understand someone's going to overpay for him. I just want the twin Jason McCourty back. For a 32-year-old guy that was on an 0-16 team, like, he was literally thrust into the number 2 role as the cornerback, and the best part about that is him being like very dependable, not amazing, even though that play he made in the Super Bowl was amazing, unbelievable, right? Yeah. He wasn't even supposed to be there, and it was Gilmore's fault. But the fact that he's so decent to good, they literally are just like, do your thing, Gilmore, because Gilmore is unbelievable. Yeah. Like, from first week, I was like, this dude's all pro level. So, like, you're just like, whoever he's on, forget it. It's done, right?
Yeah.
So the fact that they're, you know, if you have, like, a kind of weak number 2, you're like, Stefan, you got to go all around or whatever. It's just like, no, just get this guy and you're good. We got the rest, you know, kind of thing. So
right.
I honestly I can't think of too many other people in free agency. Like, just, yes, of course, there's people out there, but considering their cap, I'm just like, well, yeah, I'm going to be reasonable here.
The only position that you might be able to find a pretty good player at like a decent price is going to be safety, just because that market is so full right now.
I would like, the only problem is they're set on secondary. Like, secondary and O-line, they're like totally set. They could use, and like, honestly, they're even okay on linebacker. They could just use a lot of like offensive help, and that's who gets paid, son.
You guys are going to sign Devin Funchess and turn him into an all-pro
I was going to
receiver.
say, like, I would like, Funchess is like tall, right? Like 6'2",
Funchess
6'3".
is tall, and he's deceptively fast. He just has problems with catching the ball, but again, whenever players go to the Patriots, they learn how to catch the ball again. So, yeah.
This is also a pipe dream because it's not technically reality yet, but Josh Gordon is still a Patriot. Now, of course, he has to be. He literally is. So, like, if he gets reinstated in May, he is still a Patriot. Now, it's not something you hitch your wagon to, for obvious reasons, but man, seeing just a fast, tall dude on the like, you know, in the Z was just like, whoa, it's been so, you know, like, you always see, like, an Amendola over there, or, like, a Brandon LaFell or whatever, and then you're like, whoa, look at this dude.
Yeah,
like,
he's fast.
One of the first catches he ever caught was, he was in the Z on the sideline, and the guy was, the cornerback was too far off him. He was, like, 7-8 yards, and I was like, just run him in a slant. And you know what he did? He ran in a slant. It was like a Madden play. It was like, audible slant, 10 yards, and I was like, whoa. And, like, that's the kind of thing that only a big-bodied guy like that can really do. You can't really, you know, you'll get pushed around a little too much as an Edelman. So, like I said, I don't want anything super, super, super crazy there. So, I guess my last thing for the draft is, who do you think goes number 1? Because this is an interesting thing for the Pats, because Kyler Murray, the 5'10" and 1/8 inch quarterback out of Oklahoma, has been very much rumored to go number 1 to the Cards, who just spent pretty decent capital last year getting Josh Rosen, who, let's be fair to Rosen, I have no idea how good he's going to be, but he was put into a really bad situation.
Yeah, he absolutely was.
A coach who seriously did not know what was going on. No playmakers besides a 85-year-old Larry Fitzgerald.
Yep.
What do you think about that? You think they'll take him number 1?
I think the A-team will take him number 1.
The what?
A-team.
A-team will take him number. So you think they might? I
think this is gonna be the storyline throughout until every team has like a quarterback that they deem to be a franchise quarterback. I think that every year the number 1 pick is gonna be in play for a quarterback. I don't know if it's gonna be them. I don't know if maybe it could be like the Jaguars. Like, it could be, I don't know. Like, there's a lot of teams out there who could use that. Maybe even like the Broncos. I mean, they're crazy when it comes to quarterbacks.
They are certainly crazy. By the way, speaking of that, did you see the news today?
Yep.
Case Keenum going to make a case for him going to the Redskins. Kind of interesting, and also really sad news for Alex Smith just in general, because the more they make like moves for like quarterbacks, you're like, oh yeah,
it was almost a foregone conclusion he wasn't going to play this year.
And he's, you know, 35,
he could be done.
He could be done. And it's such a shame because he's such a nice dude. But yeah, you just know that's already a thing. And we're talking here 6 months away from the season, and they're like, oh no. Like, imagine someone like so hurt that like you're like, will you be good in 6 months? Oh God, no.
Yeah,
it's just like, all right, well, you are really hurt. So yeah, that's interesting with the Broncos doing all that. I am curious to see what happens with that, because Peter King from Pro Football Talk said that it would take a third to get Josh Rosen, even though they just traded a couple picks to go up to the first round to pick him last year. And that, like, I guess new coaches come in and want new stuff, but that would be interesting. And that would be something I think he could do okay in New England for that one. I think he'd be all right, but that's my number one thing I'm watching.
Yeah, it's a little early to quit on him in my opinion, but it is.
Yeah, after 1 year, after like Sam Bradford was signed for $1 bajillion again.
Yeah. Right?
Has he retired? Has he officially retired?
No, I don't think he has.
He doesn't even ever have to officially retire. Some team will just... It's like people still call Jay Cutler. They're like, you want to play? And it's just like... That's... How pathetic is that for the NFL quarterbacking? Like, it's like 15 teams have a quarterback they're like, no, that's our dude. And the other 15 are like, maybe we can call Jay Cutler. Like, can you... Like, yeah, everyone's been there, but you're still like, oh my God. Yep. Someone's going to call Sammy Sleeves and be like, so what if we give you like $10 million this year? And he'll be like, I guess. You know, he gets thrown in under that, and it's just all such nonsense. So, yeah. So that's pretty much like I said. I'm not a huge draft guy. In Bill we trust it. I don't know. We will take a safety in the second round from Rutgers, but now that Shiano is the D-Cord, I'm just worried that we'll have a little too much Rutgers on the team. Like, I don't know where that meme magic is at this point now. Like,
yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm going to miss Brian Flores. For one season, I went through how many seasons of Patricia and Bend But Do Not Break, where it's like, drop 8 into coverage!
Yeah.
Into soft zone coverage! And then you're like, it's like, well, we gave up 500 yards a game, but we're top 10 scoring. It's like, please just blitz once in a while. And then Flores comes here, and like the very first game of the year, he said to like 6-7 people, and you're like, oh my God, this is great. And then he leaves, and you're like, cool. We had 1 year. We had 1 year of blitzing, and I hope Shiano...
I will say Greg Schiano is the only defensive coordinator the Bucs have had in a long time who made their defense actually good.
Yeah, so. That's the hope. I just want some blitzes once in a while. Not all the time, just a blitz once in a while. So, let's head... we have 2 more topics really quickly to discuss. The first, I asked you earlier. I totally forgot to go over it, but I'm so interested to hear what you say. I want to hear what your favorite NFL game is of all time. It can be Panthers or not Panthers related. And if you want to think about it, I can go into mine. I'm not going to do a Pats game because it's a little too easy. Do you want a second?
Yeah, go ahead.
2016, Packers, Cardinals, NFC wild card game. I think it was a wild card game. That was the game that Aaron Rodgers completed not 1, but 2 Hail Marys to tie it up and to send it into overtime. And like unbelievable game. It was like, I don't know, 35-35. Just the whole way through, everything about it was absolutely unreal. Not Kurt Warner. Carson Palmer had that ridiculous throw to Larry Fitzgerald in overtime. The only bad part about the game is that it ended so quickly in overtime, where Palmer somehow eluded a bunch of pressure and got it to Fitz, who just ran 80 yards because that's what Larry Fitzgerald does.
Yep.
That game, I mean, those 2 Hail Marys, like, Brady's the GOAT, but, like, clearly Rodgers is, like, the most talented. Like, those 2 Hail Mary throws, to the same guy, by the way, I forget his name.
Jeff Janis.
Jeff Janis, that's it. I looked the other day to see if he still plays, and he, like, doesn't really.
I think he might be in the AFL.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, like, to the same dude in, like, 3 plays is unbelievable. Like, I was thinking about that game today and just how, like, we just lost our mind on that game.
Oh, yeah, that was amazing.
And it's not just like the Minneapolis Miracle last year. Like, we lost our mind on the very end, but the rest of the game was whatever. And quite frankly, 28-3, although I could watch it forever, like, had like some like lull moments for the first like quarter and a half. But like that Cardinals game was so... Cardinals and Packers should just play in the playoffs all the time. Every time it's good. Every time.
I agree. My favorite that I can think of in recent memory would be 2013. It was the Panthers and the Niners. And regular season, Cam Newton had been doing really well that year. Colin Kaepernick had been like the guy. So like it was 2 very highly skilled quarterbacks going into a game, and it turned out to be a 10-6 game. Oh. And the best part was, like, it wasn't like the teams were, like, bad on offense. It was just the defenses were so good. Like, that was like, top-tier Niners play when they had Bowman, Willis, like, that crazy defensive line. The Panthers had Thomas Davis, who had just, like, came back in a flurry. They had Luke Kuechly. They had, like, that defense that they had would have definitely won if they paired that with the 2015 offense. And what I loved so much about that game was it was one of those defensive games that was defined by big plays. It wasn't even just like, oh, they messed up. This guy threw a pick, or this guy did something stupid. It was just hard hitting from snap to snap. Good run by D'Angelo Williams gives the Panthers the only touchdown of the game. Thomas Davis forces a forced fumble, like, with a huge hit on Kendall Hunter in the middle, and, like, it was just that it was a really nice game to watch because it kind of like made the Panthers into, like, an okay, this is a team we can't make fun of anymore type situation. So that's the most recent one of memory. It's hard for me to give, like, a single game my number one pick just because, like, every game has its own thing.
Oh, for sure.
Watching that game was so enjoyable just because it was everything I love about football, at least back then, where teams were just hitting each other it was just hard-hitting, nasty football, and the Panthers only came out on top because they made a couple more big plays, and that's ultimately what football is about, is who makes more big plays than the other.
Now, let me just say this real quick, that I will fight you, not IRL, but I will fight you in words if you don't admit that the greatest game played in the last, I'm going to say 25 years, because football is so different right there, is Super Bowl 49, Seahawks and Patriots. That game,
oh, yeah, absolutely.
That game, I was thinking about it the other day, and I actually rewatched the whole thing, and that game had it all. Brady wasn't at his best, and Wilson wasn't at his best, but there are so many times where you get to the Super Bowl, right? I think Panthers-Broncos was a good example where you're like, you would almost rather see, like, some of the different matchups, like Pats Cards would be, I feel, more interesting, or Pats Panthers, whatever, would be more interesting, right? But, like, that was the one where it just worked out and it was right. You know, the NFL playoffs is so weird. A lot of times, like, the best team just happened to the Packers and Rodgers all that time, 15-1 in 2011, whatever. But this was the one where it was like, okay, these are the two teams. Like, it's like, I wish we wouldn't have played the season, right? Like, this is just what it should have been. And it does get memed on for the Malcolm Butler interception, but those two teams were so unbelievably, like, close. Yeah. Just the Pats had all the offense that the Seahawks had the defense. Yeah. I feel like that was a Seahawks team that was better than 2013, in my opinion. I think that was like their absolute best. Yeah. And honestly, it only took a Belichick run team to, I won't even see Brady, because Brady was good, but he wasn't, like, amazing in that game. No. To win that game. It was unbelievable. It was a pick'em before, and Super Bowls are rarely ever just straight up pick'ems on that, especially since it was closer to Seattle and it was much more of a Seattle crowd and all that. But people just look at the Butler interception, which it's hard if you didn't watch it live. It's hard to put into context. Like, as you watch it again or see it on highlight reels, you're like, oh yeah, that play. It's hard to put into context exactly how everyone exploded when that happened.
Oh yeah, no, like that was, I was watching it live. I do remember that. Yeah, it was an absolutely fantastic game. 100%.
And unlike 28-3, where the second the Pats, even before they got the last 2-point conversion to tie it up, you're like, yeah. Right? Like, you just knew.
You felt the momentum swing.
You just knew. Yeah, it was like, it was a slow burn. This was like, so Pats went ahead 28-24 with about 2:05 left. The very first play from scrimmage, again, people forget a lot of this other stuff, was a wheel route over Jamie Collins, who was effing around, to Marshawn Lynch, and they got past the 50-yard line already. Yeah. And there's the 2-minute warning right there. The Seahawks had to burn 2 timeouts during that drive because they could not get plays off in time. There was, after the curse catch, the crazy, again, that, yeah, I remember that this too. Is stuff you cannot, like,
I remember when I saw that.
Try to write up a movie.
When I saw that, I was like, the Seahawks are going to win.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. And you know what? Literally, like, I was sitting there, like, I was just dying, because this is before the most recent Super Bowls, and we had David Tyree and Mario Manningham, and the one guy that was there was like, I bet they're going to show it. And I knew what it was. The second curse got that catch. And they had it. It's like they had it ready to go. They did, because like how can you? It was like before the commercial break. It was like It was like, look at this. Oh, it reminds me of David Tyree. And they just had it. They had it. They had it. It was
oh, no, not
7 seconds later, they were like, and it was just unbelievable. But, like, the simple fact that the Seahawks had to call, just that shows you football is so amazing in all the small things about it. The Seahawks had to call 2 timeouts because they couldn't get plays off, and you know what? I don't think they throw the ball there if they have 3 timeouts. People always say you should run the ball. There was 20 seconds left with 1 timeout, and it was 2nd and goal.
Yep.
Right? If you run that right there, you absolutely have to take your timeout. Absolutely, right?
Yep.
And you have to score a touchdown. So if you run it there and you don't get it in, which it's been 4 years, we all know that Marshawn wasn't good on the goal line. Pat's had a good goal line D. Then you have to throw it. And if something were to happen where you get a sack or you get it short, you lose that game.
Yep.
So I will always say, always, that getting a throw there made the most sense.
Yep.
I fully believe it, and it's a play. The only reason was Butler saw them do it.
Butler made an excellent read and ran
and Brandon Browner, by the way, did a great pick play on that. It was on the 1, so all pick plays are legal there. But like it is the. Like, I want to say the correct call. Like, I know everyone at the time was like, but, like, that game had it all. I cannot, like, it just, I don't know. It was just so unbelievable the whole way through. Everything was just amazing. You really should watch it again if you ever get a chance. Anyone out there listening, because it's available on YouTube everywhere. NFL puts these. I love that NFL does that. They pull up full big games that you can watch again, and it's fantastic. But you know, it's so easy to say I should have ran the ball, but to be like to look at where it led up to, unbelievable.
Hindsight's 2020.
And again, I was yelling at Belichick so much, but when Lynch was got short of the goal line on the 1, which by the way, Dante Hightower, big play guy all the time, stopped him right there. It was 50 seconds left. The Pats had, I believe, all 3 timeouts, at least 2, and Belichick didn't call a timeout. Do you remember this? And there was, they talked about it later in the America's Game 2014 that like Belichick was just staring down the sidelines at Carroll and seeing all this like crazy nonsense going on. Like clearly they did not have their composure. Yeah. Like they weren't like blah blah blah. Here's the play, right? And he was just staring at them, and you can see on the they have the shot of him, and Patricia's like in the headset like, you want to call a timeout, Bill, you want to call a timeout? And he goes, no, I got it. And he's just staring across at them. He's like, I got it. And he just like, you know, hindsight is 2020, and like I would like kill him if it was like, oh, they scored 15 seconds left, thank you. Because like if you have 2 timeouts left and it's 45 seconds and you just need a field goal, maybe a chance, right? But like he could just tell that something weird was going on over there, and that actually happened in '53, where there was a clip of Belichick being like, "Where's McVay? Where's McVay?" Because he just like that's part of his thing is he's just looking to see like what they do there. Yeah, unbelievable. Like I said, perfect game, just perfect, absolutely perfect. So let's just finish off real quick. This is about the amount of time I wanted to do. We always do it. We do this so well. We should just do this every year. After the Panthers' next Super Bowl
that's a big commitment. I don't know.
I know every year. Whoa, once every 365 days. Oh. So we do this every year.
Yeah.
Let's do our much too early predictions. Obviously, we'll have this uploaded before free agency starts. So this is ridiculous to choose right now, but let's do it because this is fun. So let's go with division winners. I'll go individually by winner, and we can pick them there. See what we agree on. AFC East, Pats.
I give it to the Chiefs.
AFC East?
Oh, I'm sorry.
If you want to give the AFC to them, that's fine.
Pats, yeah.
Okay. AFC South, Colts.
Yeah, I'd give it to the Colts, too.
Yeah, I mean, the Jags could be up there again with Foles, but
they have a lot of people they got to let go to make that work.
Yeah,
the only team I might say would be the Titans, but I still think with the $100 million cap space and the fact that they were good, it's hard for me to say.
Yeah, they could seriously get 2 of the 3 top free agents there, and I don't trust the Texans to do anything. I like Watson a lot, but I just don't trust the Texans after that terrible wild card game. AFC North, your dog pound, the Cleveland Browns. Let's go. In Baker we trust, baby. Now, of course, the conventional wisdom says Steelers. I would not say Ravens because I'm just not fully on the Lamar I am bandwagon yet. Yeah, Just fully on them?
Not even just Lamar. I just think that that they have the ability to. They have a good defense. Their defense was really good. They're going to have another year with Lamar Jackson potentially because they didn't start the season with him as the starter.
Correct.
And that's the thing where like they kind of built the playbook around him, which I thought was really good. The way that they completely tailored the game plan around him. So with a whole offseason plus like getting him some wide receivers. Potentially getting Le'Veon Bell. That's something that there's been.
Do they have the salary cap to do that?
They could make it work.
Wow.
I think it's the Ravens.
I mean, I could see that. Like, I'm not going to fight you over that. I think the only team that you'd be like, is the Bengals.
Yeah,
any other three. Like,
they don't even know if Andy Dalton's going to be their quarterback
here's
this year.
Here's the funny part. Like, every year there is a team like that. Like you're like you laugh at this point, but then it's like January and you're like they made the playoffs.
Yeah,
it just happens. What was last year's? We'll get it. I'll figure it out over that. But like there's always a team where you're like, wow, maybe the Ravens. The Ravens weren't anywhere up there, and then they
100%. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
AFC West, not as far away as you would think, but I think you got to give it to the Chiefs.
Yeah.
Mahomes is fantastic. I mean, he just is. The only bone who could take him down was Brady. Again, barring major injuries, I see that happening.
Nah, Chiefs, I'm 100% on. Like, I think the Chargers could have a very realistic shot at it, but at the same time, I can't not give it to the guy who just set the league on fire like that with Mahomes, and it's not like a whole lot has changed for that situation. So.
AFC Championship game? You already said you have the Chiefs there.
Yeah, I think the Chiefs and the Pats will be playing in the AFC
I
Championship.
would have no problem with that. Just to not give a boring answer, I gotta say Pats just because it's been 8 years in a row.
It's just it bothers me that because the Chargers are good, the Colts are good, whatever team usually comes out of the AFC North is good, but none of them can ever stop Tom Brady and the Patriots. Like the Colts got embarrassed by him.
In the championship game.
Yeah, they got embarrassed, and the Chiefs are the only team where I feel like even with coaching differences. Because the Patriots going to come out and do something and take away your strength. I still feel like they have the firepower to make it work.
I mean, there was 28 points scored in the fourth quarter of that AFC Championship game. The Pats would take the ball slowly down the... I feel like this was Madden. This is me and Madden. Going slowly down the field, 6-7 yards at a time, eventually score. Then the opponent scores in 45 seconds. That's how they were doing it. All of a sudden they were Mahomes was like, oh yeah. It's just bombing it deep. They scored, 31 points, the Chiefs, and Tyreek Hill had one catch. It's unbelievable, right? They're just... so I'll say Pats Chiefs, but just to not say the same thing as you, I'll say Pats Colts, because I feel like that could be
they could make a major jump.
Definitely a thing.
They could make a major jump forward this year with that $100 million cap space and the draft.
I mean, that team was good. Now they weren't good enough to beat the Pats or the Chiefs at home, but they were good enough if they would have memed their way to Colts Ravens. They could have made the Super Bowl if that was the championship game. They're not quite there, but I could see it. So NFC East. I'm going to go on a limb here, and this is stupid, but follow my logic here. Rarely in the NFC East does one team win back-to-back.
Right.
So I'm not counting the Dem Boys in that, even though I don't see a major reason they would drop off, but football's weird. It's like the NFC South. Football's weird, right? I don't fully, for whatever reason, homerism, whatever, believe in the Eagles on this. And, of course, the Redskins, I don't think they're going to win it with Case Keenum. So... You're New York Football Giants. I don't know why. I just if you asked me to put money down on it, I would just abstain. But I just have this weird I know Eli is not good, but that defense ain't bad, and Barkley is pretty damn good. And if they actually utilize him well and everything, I don't know. The NFC East is so weird. Either. It's so weird. The NFC East is a bizarre. Who picked the Cowboys last year for them to win it after the Eagles won the Super Bowl?
Yeah.
Cowboys fans maybe, but no one else.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Giants for me. I don't know.
I picked the Eagles because they're gonna continue to have that really strong defense. Dave Gettleman's letting Landon Collins walk. I don't get that at all.
Yeah.
They still the Giants have too many needs for me to hitch my wagon to them. The Redskins just traded for Case Keenum. We all know what's going to happen with that.
8-8.
The Eagles,
7-9.
yeah, the Eagles are good, but the Cowboys are good, but they're going to spend a lot of money trying to retain DeMarcus Lawrence, and that's gonna hinder them a little bit. And They traded for Amari Cooper as well. Like, they're pretty much hitching their wagon to what they had last year, minus the draft. So, I just think that teams will figure it out this time.
I could definitely see that. So, NFC South.
NFC South.
In my mind, I want to say to you right now, the Tampa Bay Bucks.
I actually was going to pick them.
Because of Bruce Arians. But, like, I can't. Like, that team was not very good this year. And, like, I don't know. So, just really quickly, the 20-second breakdown on them. Do they have a good roster besides the quarterback fiasco?
Their offense, you could argue, is the most talented physically, as far as, like, athletically. Maybe the most talented offense in the NFC. I mean, like, I don't know what they're going to do with Deshaun Jackson, but, like, Mike Evans is really good. They just drafted the tight end last year.
Oh, yeah, Howard,
O.J. Howard. They drafted him. They could end up getting a good running back this year. Like, Bruce Arians is fully committed to making Jameis Winston successful in this offense.
And that's why I want to say it.
Yeah.
Because it seems to change every year, I don't want to say the Saints. It's the same as the NFC East. It flips up and down. And
the Saints have no cap space.
Based on what you're saying about the Panthers, I think they're too many pieces away. So I want to say the Falcons, but I don't want to say the Falcons.
Yeah.
Because, like, there's a team on paper, you're like, wow, they're really talented.
They had a lot of injuries last year.
They really did, but you say the Bucks, I'll say the Falcons.
Okay.
I have Falcons written down, but then when I was thinking about it, I was like, I want to say the Bucks.
The biggest issue with the Bucks is their defense, and this is a draft where you load up on the trenches in the front. That's where I'm looking at. And, like, in the second and third rounds, there are good defensive back prospects. They could 100% revamp that defense in just the draft this year, not including what they do in free agency.
I think that'll be probably the most, beside the AFC North and the NFC South, I feel are the most interesting divisions going into this 100%. Year.
Mm-hmm.
NFC North, I am going to go another double dip here of a team that actually won it last year, and I'm going to say the Bears. I thought about it, and I'm like, okay, Lions, no. Vikings, who's their quarterback? That's right, Kirk Cousins, no. Do you know what his record is against teams that are over 500? It's, like, unbelievably bad. It's, like, 5-30 or something. It's like, it's that bad. Like, I don't have the exact number, but it's like 5-25. It's something that you'd be like, wow, you only win against bad teams, except for you lose to the Bills by like 40 points last year. So yeah, and the Packers, I just feel like they're too far away right now, before the draft, before whatever. Aaron Rodgers, like, I just worry at this point in his career he's a diva. That, like, I don't believe in them. So, and the Bears still have all their defense. I don't think that they're missing, losing anyone big there. Do I believe in Mitch Trubisky? Of course not. I don't think, that he's going to be like lead them. But, when you have a defense that has, however many touchdowns as a defense they scored last year, forget about it.
Right. I'm going Packers, actually.
Yeah? I think you believe in Rodgers?
Well, it's not even just believing in Rodgers. It's the fact that there was a really underplayed story about last season, which was that there was so much disjointed crap going on with their coaching staff. So now that they've moved on from a lot of those guys, I believe they fired Mike McCarthy, too, finally.
Yeah. Oh, they did it before the season was over.
Yeah, like, I think that just that change of pace, like, a refocusing of it without the same crap, because Panthers fans have been really frustrated with Ron Rivera for the longest time. Mike McCarthy is just like him. Like, so I think that maybe the refocusing and, like, kind of changing the way that they approach the game, and maybe, like, listening to like, as much as people want to crap on Rodgers, he is a good quarterback and he knows what he's doing.
Oh, he's a fantastic quarterback. And I just last year I saw many games where I looked at him and I was like, this dude's not trying.
But the problem is that there was times where he literally was like, I don't know if my coach knows what I'm doing. Like, they had coaches who were teaching players where the players didn't really respect what they had to say, and that becomes a huge problem. So I think that they are someone to definitely watch, because they're not going to just rebuild with Aaron Rodgers. So they're definitely a team for me to watch. 100%.
I could see that. I mean, I would respect any, but you could say Lions, and I would respect that. I am such an unbeliever in Kirk Cousins.
Oh yeah,
that Week 17 game where all that they had to do, and I don't want to say that it's an easy thing, was just beat the Bears and they're in, right?
Yeah.
And by the way, that was a weird thing for the Bears to do, looking back on it, when the Bears were like, let's play them really hard, and then the Eagles were playing at the same time, the Josh Johnson-led Redskins. So if you believe the Eagles were going to lose that, Come on, right?
Yeah.
So what they were saying is, if we beat the Vikings, we get to play the Eagles. I don't get that.
Yeah.
You lay down. If I'm Nagy, I sit all my starters. I run the ball up the middle every single play, and then I go, oh, we play Kirk Cousins and the Vikings at home next week. Oh man, oh no. But instead you chose to play legend Nick Foles, who just pulls stuff out of nowhere, and this scrappy Eagles team. What were you thinking? What were you thinking? I am such an unbeliever in Kirk Cousins. Like, I will not bet anything on him. Like, if I ever like bet on a Vikings game, it's to be against them. It's just the Pats played the Vikings and they were like 7-point underdogs, and I hit that 7 so hard. I was like, thank you, and they won by 14. So, yeah.
Oh, man.
NFC West. I guess we're ending on a pretty easy one. Rams. I mean,
I picked the Seahawks.
You picked the Seahawks? Yeah.
I think that they came on strong at the end of the year, and they're only going to have more time to rebuild their roster. I didn't think they'd be competitive at all last year.
Do you think there's a real Super Bowl low? Teams that lose the Super Bowl usually have a pretty bad season.
I don't even think it's the fact that it would be a Super Bowl lull and that like they just don't perform as well. I think it's just that a lot of times like people see what happens in the playoffs and they say, "Oh, that team came down slow off of it." But what actually happens a lot of times that these teams write the playbook on how to beat these teams. Like, it happened with the Panthers this year. Like, I am 100% certain that the Saints wrote the book on how to beat the Panthers, and then teams that were able to do that then replicated that against that team. And I think that that's exactly what teams are going to do against the Rams, especially a team like Seattle, especially against a team like the 49ers.
You're saying the Pats exposed the Rams and how to beat
the Rams' offense is not overly complicated. It's based on handing the ball off or rolling out with Jared Goff. So every time they did the roll out, they forced Jared Goff to make a difficult read. They had somebody on the under route, they had somebody on the over route, which means he had to make a more difficult decision than he's used to. They systematically picked apart what Sean McVay did to make Jared Goff excel. Because he was basically like doing the Madden thing. He would call plays to him like mid-snap. So that was why when you saw the Patriots line up on defense and all of a sudden shift right before the ball was snapped, that's exactly what they were doing, is throwing all that off, putting it on Jared Goff. So I think that
was brilliant.
Yeah, and I think that teams are going to figure that out, especially a team like Seattle with Pete Carroll, especially a team like the 49ers, who are going to have a much stronger front seven than people give them credit for. I think the Rams the Rams might win that division, but they're not going to run away with it.
I could see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the fact that the Rams run 3 wide receiver 90% of plays, I find to be kind of bizarre, just because I'm used to so many Pats games where you don't know what you're going to see. The first play of the game, you could spread them out wide, and the fact that you're well, we're going to see 3 wide receivers. Yep. And a lot of the stats I was reading up towards the Super Bowl showed that if they came out in the the 2 tight end package, made more yards per play, but it's just that this is our thing, this is what we do. And like I said, it's very interesting. And I guess it really sometimes only takes one game to really expose a team.
It is absolutely difficult to maintain an offense where you can do this, where you can be consistently productive in the NFL, because teams figure you out. It's what happened to RG3.
Well, that would be my argument against Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, though.
The only thing about
But your argument is they're going to completely change what they did before, and my argument is I don't think they can.
I think they will, because they did that mid-season.
Yeah, okay.
They completely changed their playbook just to fit Lamar Jackson. I think that...
But you think he's going to be more of a pocket passer this year?
No, I don't think they are, but I don't think they're going to throw the same... I don't think they're going to run the ball nearly as often.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's hard to run the ball more than they did.
I think they're going to tailor their playbook around his strengths and allow him to throw more, but at the same time, I don't think they're going to be doing... What the Ravens did was really simple last year. Their entire offense was based on the read option. It was a halfback dive into a quarterback chance to throw the ball or run it. It was very simple. It was very, very easy. And teams figured that out when the Browns figured it out first, and then the Chargers adapted that. They were like, okay, we're going to put all the speed possible on the field, cram the hole, so whatever Lamar Jackson's going to do, he's going to have somebody about as fast as him on him. So that I I just don't think that the Ravens are that stupid to just continue to bang their heads against that, especially not with John Harbaugh. He's just not that freaking dumb.
Yeah, that's true. He is a really good coach. So NFC Super Bowl, tougher to pick than the AFC. I feel. I'm sitting here trying to think and trying to I feel like it's just going to be. Let's do the NFC Championship game first. I feel like it's just going to be something that we wouldn't even expect.
Yeah,
you know 100%. What I mean? Just something weird. So I'm going to say something I would like to see. I'm gonna say I don't think the Bucs could be good enough to get there. Unfortunately,
I actually think that even if the Bucs win the NFC South, I think the Falcons went up in the NFC Championship.
I could see that.
Yeah.
You know what? Let's. I'm gonna give this to. This is never gonna happen, but to. No, I guess I picked the Falcons. So the Falcons, I'll pick, and the Packers as a wild card team, and let's go with in the Super Bowl. Okay, we've always wanted this. It might be a little too late, but we'll see. Patriots, Packers. Rodgers, Brady.
Oh, baby. I would enjoy that.
I've wanted that so long, dude. It was supposed to happen in 2011, but then Eli came along. Yeah. By the way, sometimes the best things, silly stuff happens, makes it for the best. Super Bowl 49 was clearly supposed to be Packers, based on them winning that game by 17 points, but just losing at the end, and of course then we get an amazing game out of it. So,
right.
But I feel like it's bound to happen at some point, and Brady doesn't have that many years left.
Yeah.
So they got to get it going on. Now, do I think the Packers are a good enough team to do that? No, but do I believe in Aaron Rodgers that much? Yes.
I think it'll be Eagles-Falcons.
I could see that.
NFC Championship.
I could see that.
I think that this time the Falcons will go over them.
So Falcons-Chiefs Super Bowl.
Yeah.
That'd be an interesting one.
Yeah.
That'd be interesting. Now... Yeah, they did have a lot of injuries last year, because I'm remembering a lot of pundits pick the Falcons. Well, it's not even
just the fact that they had injuries, is that they had good players like, what's his face? Keanu Neal?
Yeah, the safety.
He went down, and then DeMonte KZ ended up being pretty good behind him.
That's
they have
true.
that. Deion Jones is really good. They just franchise tag Grady Jarrett. They're going to figure out something with Vic Beasley. They might even draft another good defensive tackle, Ed Oliver. He's a dark horse. If they end up with Ed Oliver, Grady Jarrett, Vic Beasley, if he sticks around, but even if not, Tack McKinley, that defensive line is going to be nasty, dude. Ed Oliver is going to be crazy. If Ed Oliver gets drafted to a team where they have a presence like Grady Jarrett, he's going to wreck shop. Because he is the most athletic defensive tackle in this draft by far.
Another one I would. The NFC is always more interesting than the AFC. When Brady retires, it'll be way more open. But the NFC is so much more interesting to be Seahawks, Falcons.
I can see that.
They played in the playoffs a couple years ago, and that would be a very interesting game.
Yes, it would.
Very interesting. I guess it's just because we just saw them. I'm not very interested in seeing the Rams there again. I'm just not.
It's very possible they make it back. It just depends on. I just want to see. I think NFL teams are going to make it okay, we know what they're doing now with Sean McVay. We're going to make Jared Goff make these plays.
And I have this weird feeling that the Saints, while being a good roster, will just have a weird year.
They had to let go of so many players that are going to walk in free agency.
Oh yeah, Ingram's gone too.
Yeah, they have no cap room. They sold out to draft Harold Landry, I think it was last year. One of their defensive linemen. Yeah, I don't know if it was him, but they sold out to draft a defensive lineman that they really didn't have to reach for there. So they traded away their first round pick this year. They're not going to be an overly different team, and I know that teams figured out what they were doing on defense or on offense. The Cowboys wrote the book on it too. They figured out that Drew Brees 95% of the time, let's say, is looking for Michael Thomas or looking for Alvin Kamara. You take that away, what's he got? So that's
that one rookie was pretty good, Treadwell, or maybe I'm not thinking the right person, but they have this one rookie. I don't have his name right, but one rookie who was coming up who was pretty good.
I know who you're talking about. He was fast too.
Yeah.
He was okay.
He had a couple good games.
But yeah.
By the way, the one if I'm gonna have an apocalypse bowl, if I can't have my Packers Patriots, the one I've wanted for years because it's the game that gets all of Pennsylvania to turn off their TV would be Patriots and them boys. Oh. I don't believe in them to do it, but we were close in 2016 when the Cowboys were number one. We were close. That would be my best 2 weeks of my life because it would so I look at it this way. Right? Brady wins, he gets his 7th, and everyone's just please go away forever. And he's I'm coming back, right? So everyone's already super annoyed, right? They lose, And them boys are everywhere, and Eagles fans can't control themselves anymore. Instead of being like, Cowboys fans are always like, we have 5, and then Eagles fans are like, but it's so long ago. Like, that would be incredible. Because, like, a lot of my friends who are Eagles fans are like, I'm so glad Brady won all these other ones because it makes the Eagles look even better. It's like, we were the one that could do it, right? But, like, if they listed that, it wouldn't happen because, like Garrett would get literally dabbed on by Belichick, right? But, like, in a crazy Madden world, it would be something to behold.
My favorite thing about that, too, is that there's also the backup benefit of if it doesn't go the way you're talking about, where the Patriots win again, Steelers fans are going to be real mad.
Yes.
They're going to be so angry.
Oh, yeah, that's right, because then there's 3 with 6.
Yep.
Oh, my God. By the way, Steelers fans, hello. How you doing?
Yep.
The only thing they had for years was Sixburg. By the way, how are those, like, I'm always like RJ and all them, I'm like, be careful with those first couple Super Bowls. They're antiques, man. You watch out for them. Like, you even won, like, Super Bowl 8 or, like, 9. It's like, son, like, you know who their quarterback was? Terry Bradshaw. Look at him in, like, the studio. He's, like, a walking, like, mummy. Like, at this point, it's like, and you're like, oh, we won that. It's like, son. That's like Yankees fans being like 27 championships. Like, you won a championship when there was like 8 teams. I saw this thing the other day where Packers fans were like, never forget the real score, and it was Packers with 11 championships, and I was like,
nobody cares.
I was like, that, like, no one counts pre-Super Bowls. Like, even Eagles fans, they won in 1960, aren't
nobody
like, we won that. It's like, no one counts that. And I made a point to my friends the other day that, I have friends, by the way, that, I just had to point that out, that we're getting to the point where the first maybe 10 Super Bowls are getting to the point where they can't really be counted. No. Like, Jets fans winning Super Bowl 3, it was 50 years ago. Like, let it go, right? Like, we're getting to the point, like, I would honestly say, like, anything before, like, the 10th one, I'd be like, okay, right? Be like, the Chiefs won Super Bowl 4. It's like, this year will be 50 years since you won it. Yeah. It's like, okay, right? It's like, all right. I, like, would not count that.
Yeah.
Not in the least. So, yeah.
Back when racism totally didn't play into the NFL?
Just everything about it. And the Steelers fans, we got there first. Yeah, when there was, like, 12 teams. And, like, oh, by the way, there was no free agency, and if you got a player, you just kept on to forever, and your team was the same every single year. Yep. Okay, so I'll leave it at that. But hello, Steelers fans. Nice to join you. Oh my God, yeah, that would be the perfect apocalypse, because then Steelers fans will be mad, Eagles fans will be mad, everyone will be mad. Yep. Like, there would be so many people that would just be like, I'm not watching the game. Just literally, like, not watching. Time. Like, just dem boys and Pats fans, and that's it. Like, nobody, everyone would be like, what else is on TV? Oh, this is us? Great, I'll watch that. I've never even seen
Puppy Bowl, baby.
Yeah, watch the Puppy Bowl instead. So, Hey, thank you again for being with us. Check out Cat Scratch Reader, SB Nation website. Brian writes for it. He writes some words down, and then people like it with thumbs up.
I also got a promotion since last year. I'm the social media coordinator now.
And you know what that means? He means he gets to troll other teams, SB Nation.
I do. Yep.
So every day he's like, hey, Falcons fans, by the way, 28-3.
Yep. I mean, I'm a little more subtle now, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for the first, I'm sure, year it was, hey, do you remember? Oh, yeah. Hey, do you remember? So, thank you again for being on, and we will see you in 2020. See you next time. Thank you for listening.
Later.